Welcome again. It's great to see everyone here. Now, we'll have a wonderful talk by Piumarta and Piumarta for viewpoints research.
Good morning. Hands up anybody who's seen this movie. One. Oh, come on. 2. Any advance? I have a 3 in the corner. Going once, going twice. Sold to the sci-fi fanatic in the corner. The movie has a certain component that talks about education and the potential dangers of automated education, shall we say. And so what we're going to do today is not quite an OOP versus FP. Who could possibly do better than OOP versus FP? But we're going to try and give you the good guy, bad guy routine. And so Kim will be the eternal optimist, I will be the eternal pessimist and cynic of the family, and we'll review some of the attempts at placing technology in the classroom and take a look, maybe with a slightly negative outlook, as to whether or not that was successful. So Kim, if you'd like to be the cheerleader.
Okay. So, good morning, everybody. We've been hearing about the wonders of information technology or educational technology for a while now. But I wonder if many of us realize just how long that while has been. There have been promises of ICT in learning for really 50 or more years now. Promises that new technologies can and will change the way we learn. So what you're looking at here is a film projector from the 1960s, and I think maybe some people in this room are old enough to have sat in classrooms where the AV guy, the audio-visual guy, maybe some of you were AV guys once upon a time, would bring this into the classroom, and for the possibility of information from the outside world that could now come into the classroom so that the students could have some of that outside world brought to them and widen their own world from within the classroom. So this was extremely exciting over 50 years ago. So there were these promises. It's going to change, it's going to transform, we're going to broaden our world. But has it really done that? Well, that's what we're going to do this morning. We're going to take a look back and consider what we've been promised, how we dealt with those promises, how we used them or didn't use them, and where are we today with all of this? So, as I said, there was this educational technology, and in the early days, this was maybe an overhead projector and an old copy machine and this thing that is a film strip projector. I don't know how many of you remember those, but the schools could get, maybe through their library services, these small canisters with these strips, and the teacher would crank them through, but they could show, again, the wonders of the world outside of the classroom to the students. Next was the introduction of the electric typewriter into the school. So you could see here many students diligently learning their typing and their keyboarding with the promise that, the office is going to become automated, workers will be automated, paperless office. This was so exciting, and it was felt that everybody must learn this new technological wonder tool that was going to save us time and effort and paper, make us all smarter, faster, more productive. So every student was encouraged to learn how to use this machine, this piece of information technology. Then what came along was kind of a combination of some media types, the cassette tape recorder player, headphones, and we started installing language labs around the world and in schools of both K through 12 education and higher education, and this was often used for study of a second foreign language or a foreign language. And so students would have their regular classroom time with their teacher and do the things that they do, and then would also be required to go into this language lab and spend a couple of hours a week where they would put on the headphones and could hear a native speaker go through sentences and programs, and they could do it at their own pace. So this was an exciting breakthrough because this was like learning. We all learn at a different speed and a different pace. So if we can't keep up in the regular classroom, we miss something, the teacher says, you know, we can't necessarily rewind the teacher, but going into this language lab, we could stop things, listen, read along with. So this was taking advantage of sort of multiple learning styles, so auditory learning and visual learning styles, so it wasn't just using one way of learning. So this was very exciting, kind of amplification, using different media forms to amplify the learning process. So this was, I think, an excellent step in the right direction. So after the language lab, or maybe slightly later, when microcomputers came onto the scene, the big buzzword in educational technology was CAI, or computer-aided instruction, and there was a huge amount of excitement about this. You could see here these students all had a microcomputer, almost a one-to-one ratio here right in their classroom. They could work together to solve problems. They were seeing how the machine worked, and this sparked, as I think you all are aware, a huge, some call revolution. Leave that to us all to ponder, but it sparked a huge industry and more in this area of educational technology. Now, a great potential, meanwhile, while all of this was happening and these new media types and this is going on, this man, Seymour Papert, who I hope everybody here is aware of Seymour Papert, and if you're not, I really encourage you to look him up on the web and do some reading. But Seymour really did bring the promise of educational technology and a new way of thinking about it onto the scene. And what was wonderful was at the time of these microcomputers, and then in the 1970s when Apple brought on the Apple II computer, he could see really a potential use of these kind of tools to give children the ability to get deeper into their learning and their thinking about how things worked and how the world works, and especially into the world of mathematics. Seymour came out with this book, Mindstorms: Children, Computers, and Powerful Ideas. If you're interested in this topic, please, I encourage you to read this. It's still available. And he combined, his methodology is what he called constructivist. So taking an active part in the learning, not just manipulating a machine, but also going out in the real world and doing physical activities and working with real devices. So these things he called turtles. These are small robots that the children could give commands to, and the robot would respond, and they had a pen on the bottom, and they would draw. So the children could learn quite a lot about mathematics through this system. And it was the influence of Seymour Papert that really drove Alan Kay to have his big revelations about really what can computers be useful for in learning and education. And Alan and other people that were exposed to Seymour's ideas got extremely excited about this potential use of computers in education. And the messages that were being delivered at that time was that it was important to have what Seymour called hard fun, not just soft fun. So soft fun might be going out and watching a football game, where you do passive and you observe. Where hard fun is going and playing football. You know, soft fun is listening to somebody play the violin, while it's hard fun to learn to play it yourself. So his whole philosophy, learning by doing, To understand the world, one must construct it, observation, going out, and then coming back in, and then using machines like this, earlier versions, and even still today, to model and simulate and to reconstruct what you've seen in the real world. So this was a philosophy that was adopted by many and still today. Again, Seymour said that the kid should program the computer should not program the kid. And here's a little, gives you a little notion of something that what Logo did, the programming language that Seymour invented. And here's this little now turtle, like that robot turtle that you saw. In the physical world, the children could now simulate what that robotic turtle was doing in the computer world, and by just simple messages sent to this, that to turn, go forward by 5, turn by 5, and then put this pen down, that could give the children and teachers a lot to explore and think about.
So Logo was a potential revolution, and some very deep things are happening here. Now, I can't speak for the rest of the world, but the problem, at least in the United States, is that most of the teachers teaching at this level are general educators, and some of them have trouble with arithmetic, let alone deeper math. And there's some very deep math happening here. When you see something like go forward by 5, turn by 5, rinse and repeat, there's actually calculus happening here. And there's a branch of graphical techniques, if you want to call them like that, called digital differential analyzers, and they work in exactly this way. And if the teacher can't see that there is some deep math happening here, how can the teacher explain to a child that this is a very deep principle? So the kids were doing this deep math, but the teachers did not understand the math. And the limited understanding of the math that was going on here meant that the teachers could not appreciate the value of the intuitive understanding of these systems that was being given to the kids. So if the teachers don't see the value, how are the teachers supposed to get excited about it and tell their colleagues about it and make the techniques spread throughout the educational system? What happened instead is that the technology was used to create rote learning software. So this whole potential was largely ignored, and kids were instead placed in front of computers and told to watch the screen, memorize what it says, and the teachers could understand this because it's what teachers have been doing for a long time. It's very easy to test results. Can you remember what equation X is all about? But the deep learning that we see here is not happening. And it's very easy to lure parents into the idea of technology's potential because it's easy to test that the computer is making the child remember something trivial. And there's instant gratification. The teacher doesn't have to work so hard, the child remembers something, so everybody wins, right? Well, okay, maybe. But a few slides ago, we saw something that was very promising, which was a room full of people, each sitting in front of a machine. But when the computing technology or misapplication of technology started arriving, at least in the country where I was studying, computer rooms looked just like this, where it was either a wall in one of the rooms or a little room down the end of the corridor where the machines were placed quite far apart. And so generally people were just working like in a language lab, all on their own, looking at the screen, memorizing the stuff, maybe learning a few DOS commands, etc., etc. And the kind of interaction that would have been possible had those machines been placed amongst the children in the context of the learning itself was missed completely. So today we see the value of things like pair programming. There is also value in that because it's an educational process, not just to programming but to learning as well. And this kind of setup completely missed that potential. But
then we were given another potential for very deep learning. So Apple Computer developed something they called HyperCard. Or how many people are familiar with HyperCard? Okay, a smattering. This was another, as I said, great potential for what Seymour Papert called hard fun. So HyperCard was a scripting environment. The metaphor that it used was something called a stack. And you were given basically blank cards, and there was a language called HyperTalk, where you could script the cards, and it was the early days of being able to combine, it was the early days of multimedia. So you could put sound into here, animation, do your own animations. There was hyperlinking was possible, so you could script one card and then make a button, and when you, press the button on mouse down, go to card number 5, you could jump and link to cards. You can see here there's an example of Beethoven's Ninth. So this was a very rich HyperCard stack or application that was developed to learn more about Beethoven and his music. So there was contextual information, text. You could hit that button and hear a portion of the score. You could see the music. You could see here there's Beethoven's World. You could find things. There were 110 cards in this stack. And here were like bookshelves. You could, go to the different subjects and have this like e-books on a screen. This was extremely exciting. It got the attention of many teachers and students. Teachers were starting to develop these stacks, make curriculum, and it was very exciting potential for deeper learning.
Oh, it's me.
But
very, very rich environment, and anyone that's programmed in this will understand just how deep this environment goes. But this is exactly what Seymour called hard fun, and guess what? It's difficult. And so just like somebody who has trouble with arithmetic cannot see the value of teaching kids intuitive understanding of differential calculus, they really couldn't understand the depth and the importance of the depth of learning that was happening in a system like this. And once more it got trivialized and dumbed down for normal people to use and understand. Could we flip the slide?
Yeah.
Thank you. And so lots of other products emerged around about the same time, all of them containing some scripting system, certainly at some level, but it was all pre-scripted. So all you really had to do was create a mashup. You could click on something, drag and drop it in a place, and a quite deep magical thing would happen, but you've really not made it happen, you've just configured something so that it would happen. So we saw clip art stuff, we saw express versions of things, studio versions, all designed to make things quickly rather than with deep understanding. And so in very much the sense Papa was warning about, these are programming the children, and the children are not really programming these systems at all. They are not simulating complex ideas, they are simply configuring a system that contains complex ideas into doing something that looks impressive. And a quick aside,
excellent.
Please. A tragedy that happened around about the same time was that Apple decided to phase out HyperCard, and HyperCard had absolutely everything they needed to make the World Wide Web 6 years before HTML was invented. But the difference is they could have done it with a real object model, they could have done it with a real model of communication and distributed communication, and a very powerful scripting language built into the fabric of everything that was going on. But they threw it away because they were taken in by the success of the trivializing programs, and they thought HyperCard was too complex for normal people to understand and to use. That's the generous interpretation. The other interpretation is that Apple themselves had absolutely no clue what they were sitting on. 6 years later, the HyperCard revolutionary wheel was reinvented in the form of a flat tire.
But hey, the World Wide Web did give educators another opportunity for some deep and rich learning potential. There was possibilities, there were so many possibilities, and the promise that we were all given was that now you have this world of information at your disposal, in your library, at your desktop. If you had a machine, if you didn't have a machine, you could go anywhere, anytime. So we've now broken the boundaries of time. There was full of rich and dynamic media, again, music, sound. You could connect with people, kids could get connected, classrooms in one country could connect with classrooms in another, we could understand cultural differences. It was extremely promising and extremely exciting, and once again, We were promised, weren't we all, that the World Wide Web was going to totally revolutionize teaching and learning, and we were going to overcome so many of the world's problems. But
So, how many people think that Wikipedia is a great educational resource? Please raise your hand. Now leave the room. No, sorry. So the big problem with things like Wikipedia is quality control. And it's certainly incredible growth potential when you have tens of thousands of little amateur editors sitting in their bedrooms or in the laundromat adding knowledge to this big public resource. But some people take this a little far. The gentleman pictured in the bottom right, I'm not going to mention his name, has allegedly, I have no proof of myself, but allegedly made thousands upon thousands of edits to Wikipedia articles. For a time he had administrator privileges in Wikipedia, and he made edits to those articles in order to remove everything that conflicted with his personal political views and ecological views that was scientifically proven and peer review information that he disagreed with, so it was out of those articles. Thousands upon thousands of articles over a period of several years. Now, the trouble with Wikipedia goes far deeper than that. Question?
oh, you're going to get into it.
That's a great example of how you were mentioning quality control. The very fact that you know about it means it was detected.
He was detected, yes, that's right.
And then in comparison with the amount of time, if you say thousands of pages, let's say maybe accumulated with a couple of hundred hours of work, if you compare it with 100 million hours of work going into Wikipedia, then it's not really much.
Well, it's not really much until you consider that so many people take what they read as gospel on this, and so many people at you don't know how high a level will be consulting these things to make decisions that affect you and me. And if those decisions are based on unreliable information, then the consequences can be severe.
But taking it back into a classroom, and for children doing research, I think what's very important, what we need to do is teach our children discernment and teach our children that it's important to check more than one source, and to teach them to look, who wrote this, where did this come from, to think that everybody has a point of view, and to give that some thought.
And this was a very, very high-profile issue that he was caught fiddling with, and there are certainly many lower profile issues that maybe have agendas creeping in that are less likely to be caught. Anyway, but it goes deep.
Yeah,
30 seconds.
No, but the same problem you have with common encyclopedia, British encyclopedia, or they all have an orientation. And the good thing about this is that you could find it in the other kind of publication, maybe you don't know it.
Well, you maybe not. You have the same potential for checking what you read in those other publications. What you have in those other publications, though, is that they have a reputation to maintain. They are a commercial entity that the bottom line depends on their reputation being maintained. They employ experts to write the articles. The experts are told to be unbiased. And there is editorial review to make sure that they do remain unbiased. In Wikipedia, you get a little thing saying, the neutrality of this article is in dispute. Please see the talk page, and you go, well, they were chatting about that 7 years ago, but nothing really happened. Who knows? Anyway, that's not real issue here. The real issue here is that the sources like Wikipedia make it very, very easy in the classroom to copy and paste instead of thinking about things. And as Kim says, teach kids not just to be critical, but to think for themselves. There is a big problem now with work being turned in that's just a mashup. It's being copied from public sources, rearranged very slightly to make a paper, and it's handed in. But what does this actually teach children? What's the underlying message here? The underlying message really is that it's okay to expect instant results, not to have to work hard, not to have to think hard, to break a sweat, stay up all night in order to get a small result. And it's reinforcing things like shorter attention spans, reduced social interaction skills, because kids no longer have to discuss a problem. They can just go to the web, click, copy, paste, problem solved. And so in school, what used to be social interaction over shared problems is turning into meaningless web surfing to the Disney Channel or wherever in school time, in break time. And typically, certainly around the time that this was taking off, the major use in the early adopters of this technology was not really to do anything deep, but really to just make a homepage. And we see that exploding with the teenage generation now, with various social media sites. And really the only thing that has is what we call the technological cult of me. It's just a little way for them to assert their presence and their importance in their little tribal community.
So, where are we today or a few years after that? Well, we have there's much talk about computer literacy and what is computer literacy. But really what we should be talking about is what is computer fluency. So when we talk about literacy outside of the computer, we're talking about not reading, but also writing. So we need to passively gather other people's ideas, but we also need to generate our own. We need to write as well, and then we need to reflect upon that. So if we talk about computer fluency, what we'd like to see is both reading and accessing other people's ideas and information, but writing, so constructing, building things, modeling things, simulating, being generative, generating more ideas, and then also going back and reflecting all of this. So it's an active creation, it's just not a passive consumption. So this is where some communities strive to go with using computers.
So we're teaching computer literacy, but let's really look at what computer literacy means. This is a selection of some of the software titles that are available to help teach computer literacy in the classroom. And here are some happy kids becoming literate with computers. Really all they're doing is learning QWERTY and how to place their fingers on those keys whilst looking at the screen. Is that computer literacy, really? Is it an actual active engagement with the media that they are manipulating? Not really. They are learning keyboarding skills. They are learning document processing applications for mundane tasks. They are not having their ideas and creativity amplified by the technology at all. If anything, they're being stifled by the technology. And here's what real learning is now in the classroom. It's getting your certificate that says you understand how to use Microsoft Word or Excel or whatever these things are. I don't use these, so I have no idea what these things do. And let's see, where was I? And parents and employers encourage this, because what it really manufactures, it's vocational training rather than any kind of deep academic training. It's manufacturing robots with manual labor skills that can go out and be used easily in the middle management that's employing these people. And eventually, even computer science departments become obsessed with vocational training as well, and the real deep theory behind computing is starting to disappear from computer science curricula. And universities now are teaching people generally to code mechanically rather than to think about programming and to understand the very deep concepts involved in algorithms, data structures, etc. But, great, these kids can get a mundane coding job straight out of college. Well, that wasn't until they discovered the guys in India are actually much better programmers because they can think. And in my discipline, I've watched this happen. I remember when I was at university going down to the university bookstore, going to the CS section of the bookstore, and what was there? There was this blue book. White cover, blue square thing, and it divided into 9 little things with little bitmap drawings in them. Oh, cool! So I picked this up and I opened it and I looked inside and I couldn't understand a single thing I was looking at here. What is this language that has 29,000 keywords? Of course, that was my introduction to Smalltalk, and I never looked back. I go into the same bookstore today. What do I see? Everybody today is assumed to be a dummy, and the technical content of these books is really very, very shallow. any science that was left in computer science is being drained away by all of the above forces. And the same thing's happening in class. Is this really advancement? We are using computers instead of typewriters, but it's the same clerical skills that are being taught, not academic skills, not amplification of creativity and understanding.
But those of us who are eternal optimists decided to try again. So, for several years, our group developed Squeak e-toys. I'm sure most of you, I hope most of you are familiar with them, and spent time in classroom developing, understanding, and developing curriculum that would work very integrated into classroom activities, especially in math and science. And this was, this spread throughout the world, as you all well know. And so how many people here have seen, or is there anybody in the room that has not seen an e-toy demonstration or the drive a car? One person. So maybe I'll just go back for 1 second. I won't do a whole demo for interest of time.
You want the menu at the top.
Yeah, so we'll do this, and we'll just go here, right. So we'll show you. So if you take a look at this little car, this has been previously painted by, presumably, the learner. And we can turn off his script here. So this was a little painting by just, you get your paint palette and you make something and you keep it, and now you've got another object here. But here's your little car, and the idea is that you make these models and you script them to do a variety of things. So you can there's sound. You can make your car drive. You can model around make it robotic, make it drive itself. You can make a little steering wheel. You can manipulate it. So here you see the actual object, and on the right is a mathematical representation of what's going on when you manipulate this object. So if you look at the car's heading, for instance, as I rotate it, you'll see that heading changes. As I move it on the screen, you'll see the X, the Y, those things change. So it's a manipulative environment where children can create their own models and simulations and do their own scripting. Now we'll go back into here. Okay, so, and what we prescribed to do in conjunction with, again, in the tradition of Papert and other constructivist type of learning pedagogy, it's very important, if you want to go deeper, that sometimes the children step away from the computer and model and do things in the real world. So part of the prescription for this was to do actual real world experiments. So in, say, a section on the ideas behind gravity, what we would do is actually get these balls of varying weights, so a foam ball and a wooden ball and a very heavy shot put, and first ask the children to hypothesize, if we take these outside from the roof of the school and we drop both of them from the roof at the same time, what do you think is going to happen? So the children give their hypotheses, and very often they believe that the heavier ball is going to hit the ground first. So we say, okay, you have your theory, now let's go out in the real world, let's test your theory. We go outside, they're all waiting, they're sitting on the ground looking, and you drop the two balls, and guess what? They think, because it's so fast, they say, yes, the heavy one dropped, got there, I saw it, I timed with the stopwatch fast, but it only takes like 1 second, right? So we say, really? I know, I'm okay, I'll quicken this up, but this is exciting potential. So we make use of another piece of technology, and that is the video recorder. So you say, wait, we can help your eyes and time here. So we record this, And now we can, almost like the language lab, we can slow things down. So we go back in the classroom, we watch, and we can slow it down, and we can rewind. The children see, oh, they start seeing what's happening. It looks like they got there at the same time. So we're actively, you know, through a series of experiments and theorizing and going into the real world, we're changing their belief systems and we're changing their misconceptions. But we find that all of us, adults too, we hold very strongly upon these misconceptions, and it takes time and it takes a series of experiments to change these belief systems. This is a series of still frames that were then extracted from that video to help the children to literally visualize acceleration and the rate of acceleration. And then after they do this, they can go back and reconstruct this on the computer and make a simulated ball and a program to simulate simulation and gravity.
If I can be optimistic for a second. So they are deconstructing the real world using technology, bringing it into the computer and reconstructing a simulation that makes the mathematics of what's happening in the real world apparent. So this is very powerful and very deep, and in the hands of the right teacher is an incredible way of teaching about how nature works.
Shall I?
Okay, I'll put on my horns now. But we're up against the same problem, which is that the majority of the teachers, we were very lucky to work with some excellent teachers, and we could hold their hands through the whole process, and the results with the kids was incredible. But the majority of teachers, when just given this, really didn't understand either the math of what was happening or the psychology behind why this is an excellent way to learn things. And once again, the technology was adopted, but the use of it was very much dumbed down from the original intention. And the eToys system, today we go to workshops with kids, and what we see mostly is storytelling rather than deep learning happening. They are not modeling, they are creating storyboards, they are not simulating things, they're just creating animations, and they're not building active worlds in which they can describe the laws of physics instead. They are just building Christmas trees with flashing lights. So this is really bordering on entertainment. It's not really learning at all. There's no deep, meaningful understanding happening. Short bursts of soft fun for these kids, and again, it doesn't really scale to real-world problems at all. The subject matter that we see a lot is fads and fashion. They'll, the girls will pull in pretty-looking dresses, the boys will pull in pretty-looking racing cars. Fads and fashion, not experience, and certainly not science. And we still see today on the eToys mailing list arguments from people saying, no, we should supply the system with much more clip art, much more, pre-scripted stuff, etc., so the kids can start creating faster. It's not the point. The point is the kids should be doing. It's not the end result, it's the way that you get to the result that is the important thing.
But there are other forms of construction going on in classrooms. So, iMovies, the children making their own movies, and often you'll see that they'll be encouraged to make what we call public service announcements. So why, smoking might be bad for your health, or recycling is good. So this is active, constructive activity. Or they're making their own news shows. They're working in Photoshop. They're manipulating digital photographs. So this is other attempts at hands-on and using new media and using a variety of media types.
Yay, TV! Well, the teachers are excited because the kids are kind of creating something. The parents are excited because, it's TV. If their kid's on TV, their kids definitely made it. But look at the medium itself. Television has been dumbed down to an incredible degree compared to what its original inventors intended. It's now a content-free medium. The original inventors of TV thought this would be a way of bringing culture, science, and learning into the drawing room of every person. They wanted opera on TV. They wanted debates on TV. They wanted literature on TV. They wanted plays on TV. Cultural content, deep content, not the kind of stuff we see on TV these days. Now television, it's probably the worst medium for serious content that exists. And again, there's an underlying message. and it's teaching kids that this is exciting. When they've made a TV show, they have succeeded, and that being on the most mediocre, lowest common denominator kind of technology medium is what they should be striving for. In fact, there may even be some negative advancement with the kind of technology that is available on these flashy new Macintoshes. In the 1980s, top left, you at least had to learn something before you could interact with the machine, because the machine didn't do much for you. You had to learn what a prompt was, you had to learn when to press the enter key, you had to learn some obscure DOS commands, so there was some amount of learning happening there. These days you just go click, click, drag, drop, and something magical happens on your whiz-bang color screen. So it's the same classroom model that we had, except it's just that the tasks have been automated, and the teacher no longer has to do them. It's an there is no exploitation of the connectivity, the communication, the distribution potential of computers, or the technology for creativity, for amplifying the learning. It's just rote learning again. And I believe that in Cuba, if you go for dance lessons and you imitate perfectly your dance instructor, you're going to fail the class and maybe get yelled at and thrown out, because the idea is not to imitate the teacher at all, not to imitate the computer at all. The idea is to understand the underlying principle and then invent your own dance moves. Again, this is what computers should be doing for kids, not the rote learning. Now, the technology is absolutely not to blame. It's not the technology's fault, it's our choice of how to use that technology that is to blame. So we can, if we choose, change the way we use these computers. But we're up against laziness, we're up against teachers, we're up against people who make the curriculum either not understanding the issues or not wanting to change the status quo for whatever agenda they might have. And of course the parents think it's great their kids are on TV and making these little things they can print and stick on the fridge. So it's a very, very great inertia that we are up against.
Hey, but what about the OLPC? Now, that's going to change the world, right? Another promise. So 1 laptop per child. It has, in fact, brought, I think, a tremendous amount of positive change to many parts of the world. I'm sorry I don't know the percentage, but I understand that the literacy rate among children in Peru has really increased, because the cost of paper and books are very, very scarce. So now these are primarily used in that instance, perhaps for reading material. So that's fantastic. I think that the message that the OLPC sent to other computer manufacturers around the world, I think this is one of the most tremendous successes of this machine. If anything else, it made other computer companies develop and release inexpensive machines so that more could afford. So if this XO machine did nothing else, doing that, I think, was a tremendous, tremendous boost. One excellent use of the XO machine in Vietnam, they're doing a pilot project for a couple of years, and using children as the bridge between experts and parents. They're having some serious problems with rice farming in some parts of the country. The newer generations, whether it's because of disease or weather, and some of the older generation don't really understand how to deal with this. Well, there are people in Japan that have been studying this and have the understanding. So with the use of these experts outside of the country, or even experts within Vietnam or in remote places, the experts are putting the material, working with schools and children, onto the XO machine. The children have generally a higher literacy rate often than the parents. The children work with the experts. They now, and the school has the power to power the machine. They bring the machine home and tell our interpreters, tell the parents the work of the experts. They can now apply some of these techniques. And now the children not only are using the technology, and this is bridging, but the children are learning the techniques for farming so that future generations, can carry on this work. So I think this is some excellent use of these EXO machines.
Yeah, I can be a little bit optimistic again. It is, and this is maybe the best use of the technology, not in the first world classrooms, but in the third world, because that's where most of the help is and most of the potential for good is. The danger here, though, is to avoid training just a potential future market for Office applications, and for whatever reason, the people in Massachusetts decided that instead of this wonderful open source operating system with this wonderful pedagogical user interface they created for it, filled with educational activities, instead the thing should run Windows. So I hate to think what kind of applications come pre-installed on that machine to help the kids learn whatever vocation it is they're going to learn. And we have heard many, many stories, which we can tell you over beer later, but one of them is that when the EXO machines arrive in these remote villages and they unpack the boxes and the kids take the machine home for the very first time, the reason that they get so excited is because after the sun's gone down, the EXO machine is the only source of light in the family home.
But other good uses of information technology, another program from this PANGAEA project out of Kyoto is that they're also using other forms of IT in the classroom, and they're using high-speed phone lines to connect classrooms in various countries. So they might hook up a group of kids in Japan with another group of kids in Korea, for instance, who literally spend a day together, kind of live in a workshop, doing activities. And they have a program that they've developed at Kyoto University called the Language Grid that can help with real-time translation if need be. And the children play games and do activities together. And cultures, the PANGAEA tries to do these activities, especially between cultures who previous generations before these children might have some cultural biases or prejudices, and they want to try to break through. This is one of the missions, to break through these preconceived and earlier biases, so the kids can see, like, hey, you know what, this kid from Korea, you know, he's just like me, you know, we like to build the same things, draw the same things, we think about the same things, we're really not so different. So this is a nice way of using information technology to sort of bridge some of these gaps.
It's yours next, I think.
So, also with the new now more affordability of machines, transportability of machines, the size and weight of the machines, really I think there again is a great potential, maybe now more than ever, to use these technologies in the ways that had been envisioned earlier by people like Piumarta and Alan Kay and ourselves. So wondering, I mean, with the iPad, you know, people are saying, is this finally the Dynabook? Is it finally what Alan Kay described back in, you know, children carrying things around everywhere, interacting, always connected, doing things together? Maybe it is.
Maybe it isn't. So we have unprecedented access to technology these days, and very, very easy technology to use. But what we're up against is quantity over quality. And are we really mature enough to use this new technology? We have demonstrated many times as a race in the past that there are technologies we are not mature enough to be allowed to use yet. And the danger I see with all of this is that the quantity goes up, but as the quantity goes up, the quality goes down. And we see this with cell phones, in particular, small devices that you can carry around and they go beep at the most inopportune moments when you should be concentrating on something deeper. Some statistics for you. SMS subscribers, that is text message subscribers, on average send 591 messages per month. Do the math. You're awake 16 hours a day. That makes about 1 every 45 minutes that you are awake. Now, grown-ups, of which some of us are, tend to send less than that, which means that teenagers who should be doing constructive things are sending far more than that. That is a lot of text messaging going on. And what do these messages contain? Well, the vast majority of them contain exactly what we said about 10 slides ago. Hey, look at me, I'm still alive. It's instant gratification. It's the illusion of being important. The technology is not developing their brains at all. If anything, it's doing the exact opposite. Compare this to 20 years ago. Communication was a much harder thing. You had far less access to it. But what were people doing with communication? I grew up knowing people who would conduct games of chess with people in Russia by writing the move on a postcard or in a letter, sealing it, putting a stamp on it, sending it. 2 weeks later, you got their move back in the mail. That's the pace of life, and that was the access to communication we had, and it was something deep that was being done. So is this really progress? Not even the iPad is a tool for learning, I think. It's become a device for passive consumption of entertainment, or worse still, goods that you can buy. Many of the social phenomena that we love to be tempted by and that prevent effective use of technology were predicted 25 years ago by Neil Postman, and before him by Marshall McLuhan. And history is teaching us an awful lot of very important lessons about how we misuse technology, yet we are obstinately refusing to learn most of those lessons. And to make technology and communication be a positive force for positive change in our lives is a very elusive goal. So, conclusions and considerations. When should we use a computer? I mean, who should be using the computer? Should it be the teacher? Should it be the kid in school? What should they be doing with it? Is it really the best medium? Maybe a blackboard is still more engaging than these technological mediums. Does the technology make us think better thoughts, or does it simply anesthetize us and get us to remember things like a parrot remembers things better? Is pop culture becoming the main event with this technology, or can we do something more meaningful with it? And will we ever start to learn those lessons that history keeps throwing at us over and over and over again? So at best it seems that these days we're using the technology to badly re-implement some older models that were best just done with a person standing in front of a room full of kids, maybe throwing pieces of chalk when they were not paying attention, or rapping them over the knuckles with a ruler when they got the answer wrong. At least that drove home the message. Idea amplification, that's what technology should be about, but I don't think we're amplifying ideas at all. We're amplifying a lot of other stuff that maybe shouldn't be amplified. Now, this is a shame, because those of us with grey hair maybe remember Ivan Sutherland's incredible work and his thesis. 1963, almost 50 years ago, Ivan Sutherland built a program where an engineer or some other designer could sit and draw approximately what they had in mind. And guess what? The computer figured out what they really meant. It corrected their drawing, it tidied it up, and not only that, it could then simulate the behavior of what it was, a bridge, a rivet, whatever they were drawing. The computer was amplifying the idea in the mind of the designer, the creative artist, the engineer, whoever was using it. And that is so far removed from what we do with technology today. So if you meet any of these old pioneers of computing, many of whom shared the same vision about what technology could do in our lives and in our schoolrooms, and you think they're kind of grumpy and upset at the entire world, maybe now you have an idea why that is. And these poor little kids that we see today, yep, really have the odds stacked against them fantastically. So, hasta la vista and viva la revolution!
I don't know if we have time for a question before the next session, or if there are questions. Maybe one over here.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. I have a hard question, but I think it might be addressed as often as this. It seems to be that history repeating itself, and we are going against the tide, against the inertia of people not wanting to, I don't know what people, but managers, teachers, whatever, not teaching how to think, how to do for themselves. I'm wondering if it is. a large percentage of the population doesn't have the need, doesn't feel the need, doesn't will to do that, doesn't have the will to do that. And because otherwise I don't understand what is keeping, it's all the same. Maybe it's harder to think about it. Maybe, okay, if you improve the education system, if managers realize if people have the power to change, everyone will be as we tend to like. But maybe it is not like that.
We can both comment on it. I mean, it is an extremely difficult question, and that's why I think so many people have been keeping at it for so many years. I mean, you know, it's easy to get discouraged, but you know, we are part of a community, and it's a small community, yet it's large enough, I think, that can affect some change. So there are still optimists and diligent people working on this problem, and there are teachers in classrooms and outside of classrooms and in non-traditional learning environments, clubs and stuff, that are really, you know, willing to do the hard fun and to make the change. So I think, you know, the way some of us deal with it is if we can just change, you know, 5% or 10% to help carry some of these ideas through. That's what you can hope for. Larger change is very difficult. Everybody says, yes, we want change, but people, change is hard, and I think many people don't want change. It's easier not to. So, you know, I don't know the answer except for to just try to send the message and try to affect small groups and communities.
And I think it's a depressing but sad reality that in many corporate, industrial situations, and maybe even in some society situations, the last thing the people in charge want is people who are creative thinkers, like to think outside the box, like to think of new solutions for things, people who don't just follow along going, bah.
I have a question. So, you mentioned, for example, Wikipedia, on the one hand, that it's not a good thing, educational-wise, so the material for education. But on the other hand, Wikipedia was built by people. Right? It came from the will of people to actually do something new. Now, it turns out that, you know, if you compute the page, and then they'll say, okay, 150 million hours per year, this is about how much effort gets poured into Wikipedia. No, this was the total one, and then you compare this with the 1 billion hours a year that US citizens spend on watching TV, and you will see, well, this is not so much. And then you mentioned people, you know, kids writing SMSs way more than adults. But then you should also count the fact that those kids don't spend that much time watching TV. So the assumption that the kids, you know, when they are writing messages, are not doing something productive as opposed to their elder counterparts doesn't really hold. So my argument is, I think that all this technology is really about empowering the energy that goes from the individual, and not necessarily still preserving the mentality that there must be a teacher that teaches. I think this is where the revolution actually comes from.
But it's important that when you are given this tremendous opportunity, that you don't misuse the opportunity. So where is the guidance coming from? Where have we built the technology yet that can be in the devices so that when the kids are using them, the devices may be saying, this might not be exactly what you want to do in order to further your academic career. Yeah, so I have a few points here, actually. We've run out of time, but I'm going to abuse the clock. I've seen kids who are quite happy to send text messages whilst doing many other activities in parallel, including watching TV. Yeah. But, you know, the scariest thing is not the kids, it's the adults, because I've seen so many adults who are quite happy to send an SMS whilst driving a car at 100 miles an hour. And that scares me far more in some ways. The other thing, in the United States now, socializing between children has sometimes become, hey, come and look at this. And so in the school yard, your friends come along, you have your little Xbox or whatever it's called these days, and you sit and play the video game, and your friends sit and watch you play a video game. A very scary thing that is a recent arrival on the internet is a website where you can watch other people playing video games streaming live. That is the end of civilization as far as I am concerned. Okay, now Wikipedia. I think 99% of Wikipedia is an incredible resource, but it's that 1% that can get you. I use Wikipedia all the time. If you want some advice on a piece of physics or a piece of mathematics, or in many cases a piece of chemistry, you can be absolutely sure that if there was any bugs in the information on Wikipedia, those bugs are no longer there. I tend to pull algorithms off Wikipedia. If I want to an obscure graph theoretical algorithm or the early parsing algorithm I showed a couple of days ago, I just pull that straight from Wikipedia and then I code it up and I can see that it works. You know, so that's my first order filter for is this information reliable. But my experience empirically so far has been that the scientific the rigorously scientific, verifiable information on Wikipedia is absolutely accurate. It's when you start getting into emotive subjects that you find people have agendas, and when they are given too much editorial power, the results can not only be damaging, but incredibly widespread. The amount of effort people put into promoting their own agenda is phenomenal.
I think the real message we're saying about Wikipedia is that it shouldn't be treated as a sole and exclusive, source. And sometimes people, that's it. That's what they go to. Especially, we've seen it with students doing research reports. That was the point for that. Not that it was bad or shouldn't be used. So we should.
Yeah. So encourage your kids to check on Wikipedia first, and then second, go to the bookshelf, find a second source of that information, read somebody else's opinion, and then think critically. Do these say the same thing?
And also I should add, we're not exclusively advocating just to go back to, one teacher standing up in front of a classroom. Not at all, not at all, not at all. We too believe in giving it to the people. I mean, doing experiments in schools, we were up against such bureaucracy and so many walls at times. That's why we decided to put eToys online for free, get it to the people, to the non-traditional classrooms, to clubhouses, to places where adults and kids all work together in groups collaboratively, where the kids can learn together with kids. So, we're not exclusively advocating, let's just go back to the old sage on the stage thing, Okay, I think we should say thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed for your attention.